I see it as there's a flow of creative energy in the universe. And when it picks you, there's no off valve on it at first. And it just starts coming through. And for the first for the first book, I finished it and had bronchitis for 6 weeks because I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept. I was just so caught up in the joy of this gift that had come to me, and I was so excited, but I made myself so sick. For the second book, it wasn't bronchitis, but it was as close as you can get without actually being it. And the third book, I had a bad cold. So I was getting some kind of control and remembering to eat and sleep and to do it for a certain number of hours instead of until my hands went numb and little things like that you learn along the way. And I've been fortunate enough to have a long enough career so far, touch wood, to figure out how to control it and figure out how to say, okay, I'm done for the day, I'm going to do something else,
right.
I'll get back to you.
So you're not sitting in the movie theater and instead of hearing the dialogue, this is running through your mind?
There are moments when my friends call it glazing, when we'll be doing something and they sort of look over and say, Nancy, you're glazing, and it's because, I'm back in the book for a little while. Most of the times it's problem solving. I'll come to something that I haven't quite hit the right phrase. It's not quite right, and all of a sudden it'll come to me. And that's, again, it's a gift. And you just say, yeah, I'm glazing, just a minute. Let me write it down first.
That's really interesting. It sounds like there's a big kinship between this particular creative, and I think all writers have their own creative process. You talk to 100 writers and it works 100 different ways, and there are no right answers. There's only what works for you.
Right.
But I've always remembered there was a wonderful moment in the film Amadeus when the young, well, actually by then, not so young Mozart, although he was always young since he died at 35,
right,
but
true.
a more mature, if young Mozart, was just in the midst of complete chaos in his household. He'd married Costanza by then. I think there were a couple kids, and there were, no money, and there were people all over the place. And the scene fixed upon him, and I think that he was standing at a billiards table, and he was rolling, and and you could see, talk about glazing, you could see that, wow, this is what he was doing mechanically. That, in fact, he was doing, and somebody described it once, I always thought it was a beautiful phrase, that he was taking dictation from God.
Oh,
and what we know about Mozart is that he was a single draft composer. If you look at his musical manuscripts, unlike almost everybody else's, that's it. He didn't go back and do what you'd call a rewrite. It was just like there. He tapped in, and now we can say, was that mystical, or did he just come with a particular ear? I mean, what was it that made him Mozart as compared to somebody who labored, in sort of engineered music? And I think for writers, obviously, some people are more like Mozart, and some people really have to, dig around.
And they're all right.
Exactly.
They're all doing it exactly the way they should be doing it. And I would never, ever say that what I do, and as I said, I don't recommend it because in some ways I envy those more mechanical writers because they really can get up at 9, work till noon, have lunch, rewrite in the afternoon. I never know how long I'm going to be working. I never know what hours of the day I'm going to be working. I'm very much a slave to my muse, and it puts me out of sync with the rest of the world very frequently. My friends know they can call anytime, night or day, because I could be awake or asleep at any time, night or day, so it doesn't matter. And part of me kind of envies people who can be very organized about it and treat it as a normal sort of 9-to-5 job. Now, the most of me rejoices and clicks its heels that I'm not like that, because there's something so intimate and wonderful about being paired with a muse like that, being accessible to the energy when it's coming. There's something very, very alive about that. And to feel that spark, there's nothing else like it. And I think you'll find all writers. That's why we keep writing. It's the intermittent reinforcement of having that lightning happen, that magic happen. There is nothing else in the world like it. And when you find it, you don't want to stop.
I'm sure that's true, and it's sort of an interesting question. If I ask you, it's not because I even know the answer or because I'm being nosy, but if in fact that's how it works for you, is there room for a lot else in terms of other people in your life? You know, emotionally anyway, or is your muse so absorbing that there's not a lot left over?
Well, I think there's,
I mean, just your own assessment. I don't.
I think that I'm huge. I mean, I think the more you use your heart, the bigger it gets. So I think that I have many friends, and I participate in many activities, but my friends all know that when I'm working, leave me alone. And I will get in touch with you. You know, the boulder goes over the mouth of the cave, and Nancy's gone for a while.
I think that the gist of my question is there thus always a part of you that's kind of withheld from everybody else because it's you and it's you and the muse and you and the right. No, but the part of you, the writing part of you, how can you in fact really bring any other person into that creative process?
Oh, you can't. It's a solitary process.
Right.
Yes.
So there's always that part of you that's just you, that you know that nobody else can come into.
Well, there's times when I'm not writing.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it's more of an emotional, not
when
a
I'm
physical,
working,
but more of an emotional distance that, you know, that basically you're in there with your voices, with your story on your own, and you can't really invite some other person to come and, you know, until it's done, walk around with you. And see, for you readers, actually, it must be very interesting for you, the way that you write, the way that people come into the story for you is when you've got it out in the book, you know, in some translatable form, and then people can interact with the story and thus with you as the writer. I mean, I find that so intriguing.
Yeah, well, and the thing is that I hardly ever talk about my books.
And you don't go back and reread them and relive them either,
do not
you?
ever go back and read. I have to look things up to remember the color of a character's eyes, details like that. But I am, nobody could possibly ever criticize my books the way I do. I am always dissatisfied with them. Those rare moments when it's exactly the way you want it, well, they're rare.
Yes.
And mostly it's not exactly because of time pressures, because you were just too tired that night to do that one more or 8 more passes to get it right. And I see all of that when when I have to go through and reread a big piece. It's like, oh, I would do that. Oh no, I would. It's just painful, and it's nice. It's good that other people aren't as intimately know. I wouldn't want them to know the way I see it, because I see all the flaws. I mean, I see the good. I mean, I make myself laugh a lot when I reread bits that are just spot on, and I make myself cry, and that's always a good sign. If I'm moving myself in any way, that's what I want. That's what I want. But I see a lot of how I could have done it better. I could have done it better. I could have done it all better.
You're a heavy rewriter then.
I love rewriting. I absolutely love rewriting. The first draft is the hard work. That's getting all the pieces you need, and then the rewriting is playing. That's rearranging pieces. It's see, when you've got the first draft, then you know what the arc of the story is. And then you can adjust the little arcs between the main arc to get the rhythm of the book right. I very much see my books as rhythms. There's not before I start writing it, but when I go into rewrites, I can see where this needs to be here, and I need to shorten that, and I need to lengthen that so that it comes here at the right time.
There's kind of a spatial quality to it, isn't it?
It's spatial. It's how to tell a good joke. The punchline has to be in the right place,
right,
or nobody will laugh. And to get the punchline there, you have to change A, B, C, D, and E. Boom, boom. Right. Ask any comedian, and it's musical. Comedy is musical, and that's kind of, I see it as musical, and speech is musical. I was on a panel at a mystery conference one time, and it was about writing if your books are set in foreign countries, and what do you do about dialogue, and how do you capture it? And my fellow panelists were going on about writing dialect and all of that, and I just said, I just hear it and write it, and it's about rhythm and music, and it's not about leaving H's off or putting them on. Or if you get the right rhythm in a character's voice, you don't have to change the spelling of anything. You don't have to greatly disorder the words. If you're relying on that, then you're not hearing it, I think.